nerds, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of Faction Factory, I want to talk about the Astronomers by Berryl. The Astronomers are an extremely interesting faction, but I need to begin this video with a major caveat. This faction has some incredibly complex timings that I often have to sit and think through as I play them, and it forces questions that aren't easily answered, so I'll do my best to be consistent in my interpretation, and I have run many of these questions by Berryl as well, but he is operating from the same rule vagaries as I am. I'm saying this all up front because I don't want to take away from the fact that this is simply a great idea for a faction. The Astronomers want to find specific cards in their deck and receive rewards for doing so. They make use of a concept that you may not see in Smash Up but you will see elsewhere, concepts that are easily explained if you think about it, and they do it extremely well. The best way to understand this is by looking at a card like Andromeda. Its action draw a card, which is terrible, but it also shuffles itself into the bottom 5 cards of your deck, which is even worse. But there's a point to all this because of the bottom ability. After Andromeda is revealed from your hand or deck, you get to play an extra minion. And this is a great example of the payoff for discovering particular actions. The action forces itself to a specific zone in your deck with what I call a stack shuffle. I really like stack shuffles, having seen them before in games like Marvel Champions and used them myself, but I think that they should only be used as an explicit balancer lever or when you want to be super intentional about where cards are going. This is definitely the latter. In fact, quite a few Astronomer cards force themselves to the same zone. It makes more sense to start with the actions so that you can see the types of abilities that can be unlocked, followed by the cards that unlock them. What I like about this faction is that Berryl seems to have gone out of his way to prevent me from finding anything wrong with it, as it does so many things right and corrects what I've said are mistakes made by formerly released factions. One of the things that stands out is the fact that the target actions, by and large, are discretely different in their top and bottom half, and they are balanced according to their context. For example, Andromeda has the worst top half, but the best bottom half, and the two abilities have nothing to do with each other. Compare this with the fact that with Beauty and the Beast, whether you play or discard a card doesn't necessarily matter to them. With Jupiter, it makes sense that the power counters would be applied when you are trying to set up in your deck, making it cast-friendly, whereas the reveal offers a greater amount of terminal power. For Halley's Comet, you get allied movement on play, but the reveal offers stronger movement that is potentially antagonistic. Polaris gives you action recursion on top, or some very important deck reordering on the bottom. Looking at some of the minions, you will see that the Astronomers do two important things. They account for item potence while also allowing it to be exploited if you set up accordingly. Galileo the Recruit does a lot for them, and at some other time I will debate with Berryl that it does too much, but first it starts with the spy-like ability to reveal 3 cards and sort them. You can discard some and top or bottom others with perfect granularity. Whereas the Astronomer actions shuffle themselves in to prevent knowing exactly what you will get, Galileo has a chance to get lucky and stash a good card there, easily set up with Polaris. Also, Galileo has the chance to trigger any reveals that occur. Should you need the recursion, the after the base scoring can shuffle in some cards at the risk of disrupting your stash card. However, you could always choose to shuffle 0, or shuffle them into the top 5, and even outside any form of context, this is an incredible recursion ability. Let's say that Galileo gets lucky and buries Andromeda. Now you have a choice. To keep it there, it means not playing your Astronomer actions and trying to trigger the same card as many times as possible. The best way to do this is with one of their double features, Telescope. Telescope gives you light deck foresight that can compound with each other for guaranteed power counters. But it also means you can potentially play 2 minions per turn or gain 6 power per turn should you set it up accordingly. But again, it means foregoing many of your other abilities. Telescope can always flip a card to the opposite end of the deck to break the item potence, allowing for more granular control, potentially set up by Polaris. For more powerful abilities like Observatory, it specifically breaks the item potence in exchange for triggering a higher quantity of abilities. One of those abilities is Armstrong. Anytime Armstrong is revealed from your hand or deck, it may be played instead of being repositioned after the reveal has been processed. He also has the ability to stack shuffle himself in for a chance to be hit by your deck foresight cards. One of those cards is Hipparchus, who as a special can reveal your hand or bottom stack and gain power for each action revealed. If you reveal Armstrong, you will get to play him instead, which is worth much more than the 1 power for an action, but this also has the ability to trigger multiple benefits: extra minion plays, power, movement, reordering, you name it. I have found this ability to be generally more about the reveals than the actual power, but it also serves as a big threat when you do a come at me strategy since you are risking losing against a lot more than the +5. I mentioned before how I don't like how Beauty and the Beast lacks outcomes for how a card is played, which gave rise to Belle's talent to discard a card, which in my opinion should never exist. Hubble avoids this problem by giving you a chance to stash some key cards in your stack while also triggering their bonus. For example, if Hubble reveals Armstrong, Armstrong is played instead of being shuffled in, but you still get to draw a card. He also gives you the ability to strategically reveal cards you draw from your deck for some outside the turn manipulation. Internally, this matters a lot to Pillars of Creation, as the drawn card can compound. At this point, if your head hurts, you're not alone, as I found that this faction requires extreme focus. Their only remaining minion is Copernicus, who is much simpler given the rest of the faction, and I think that might be a necessity. There is a nice inverted structure, as the Astronomers often burst from Galileo and Copernicus is either discarded or played early. He does get the advantage of being Hipparchus friendly on other turns and when they spread out, and that's what matters most because you avoid the usual once per turn limitation. Naturally, I had to see this in action, having played it before they were selected and again afterward. And this faction really works, but it also requires work to set up. It requires finesse in setting up a state, attempting to preserve it as long as possible, and then knowing when to change states. I also think that this faction makes you think it wants certain abilities, but it really doesn't. Shuffling obviously can disrupt the stack shuffle, as does searching. You might think that they want extra reveals, but I'm not sure they need them unless they're in high quantity. I think they want cast-friendly actions more than anything that won't disturb their uber state that you set up. So to see how this works, my first faction was an attempt at average case testing, for which I often find Steampunks to be a good choice. They don't scream perfect partners on paper, but they do give them flexible plays and good utility with movement. That means that the Astronomers are relying on themselves to set up their own game plan, unlike a Granny or Time Traveler pairing, which I won't talk about because that's way too obvious. And I found that this worked really well, because the Steampunks appreciated the card draw and sifting, and gave Astronomers a quick burst play that they could use if their stack shuffle got erased. For the rest of my combos, it was more about trying to hit some ceilings. And though I didn't get to hit this particular ceiling, I'm convinced that it's possible, and that is a Miskatonic pairing. This combo centers on the idea of Hipparchus revealing actions from the bottom, which Miskatonic can stash with Field Trip. Basically, by collecting the right cards in hand, you can ensure your big plays. One of those cards needs to be Halley's Comet to move Hipparchus off the scoring base. Another needs to be Jupiter for 3 power. With 5 actions, Hipparchus is now at 12, but because he is moving before a base scores, you need minions everywhere, conveniently buffed by the Miskatonic Global 2 power actions. What this would do is let Hipparchus go from base to base for a triple score, gaining more power each time, while using your Miskatonic specials to ensure that he goes large enough, or using Old Man Jenkins to take out targets after he leaves. I had this set up in my hand, but drew the final card too late. Andromeda helps because it lets you play the replacement minion to account for the lost power, and still let you be winning. But this combo still did well because Miskatonic loves the sifting and recursion of the Professor, as it is easy to get back both him and Gate to the Beyond in the top 6 cards of your deck. But someone here is going to try it and be able to pull off that combo because I personally drew my cards way too late. I think that I was hurt by trying to set up this play all game long, because Field Trip could have easily staged other cards for buffs all game long. Still, it did great. It wouldn't be a Berryl video unless we talked about Polynesian Voyagers. Here you are using the same Hipparchus play for special movement, but you are moving a sun-tattooed Wayfinder instead. Hipparchus is also a sun-tattooed target himself, with the potential to double score using temporary power, while the Wayfinder can stay in play with permanent power. They have recurring action-based movement with Halley's Comet. Spamming Andromeda will let you put minions on every base for a big Unity of the Tribes play, which is possible to add 3 minions or more in a turn, all without using a single regular play. The Telescope is a good action for Tiki, and Pillars of Creation makes it really easy to get to Wayfinders, letting the Voyagers hit their ceiling easily. Tattoo Artist can search the discard, which means you don't have to screw up the stack shuffle, and easy access to recurring Unity of the Tribes can mean that you have multiple bases in play, with multiple minions to repeat the action, knowing you can move a minion again in the same turn. But it wouldn't be a Bandit video unless we talk about Halflings. Halflings are the rare combo to offer the ability to reveal cards from your hand and from your deck. Consider a Rude Awakening when you have your hand full of Astronomer actions. You can potentially draw 2 cards, move a minion, gain 3 power, play an extra minion that is likely restocked from Lunch Run, and sort your bottom 5 cards. Out of Nowhere with Spoiled Brats makes it easy to draw a minion and play Armstrong at the same time. Given that this combo can recur Rude Awakening easily in minions, you are looking at multiple drops at the same time. While it sometimes felt like Galileo and Rude Awakening had competing priorities, the simple fact that you could overpower someone quickly makes up for the contention. This combo relies a lot on base minion power, but they have extreme catch-up potential. Hipparchus Staged and Last Call make it very interesting. Hipparchus into Andromeda can start a Halfling chain that will end in victory on the scoring base or another base, and this combo forces you to be very intentional in the best way possible. When I play Astronomers, I can get overwhelmed sometimes, and the stack shuffle is certainly annoying in TTS, but make no mistake, this is a fantastic idea. It adds payoff to sorting cards in a way that makes you feel that this is what Granny should have been all along. Like the actions are memories of their great adventures, and you gain benefits for discovering them once more. What do you think of the Astronomers, and who will you try with them? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.